It was quite a clean race for the broad majority of the NASCAR race last Sunday, and then with 10 to go, the curb happened. So for those of you who didn't watch the race on Sunday, it was a race of two halves, pretty much. And it wasn't equal halves either. Because for the majority of the race before, well, I mean, you got to the last couple of laps, it was quite a clean race. And, I mean, there was only a couple of yellows, including the stage yellows, and it just was, it felt like a good road course race that, like, had some strategy and had, like, beating and banging or whatever, had a yellow or two, but it wasn't bad. And then we got to the end, and it fell off a cliff. The cliff was a major result of the curb coming up in the chicane, in the middle of the infield section right before the long straightaway. So basically what happened is this curb had probably been run over too much. And, I mean, that'll happen when this track was literally used for 3 different series over an entire weekend. And it was used quite a bit. There's some people saying, well, this didn't happen last year. Last year, it was only used for the Xfinity and the IndyCar series. And Xfinity didn't have practice, and IndyCar had reduced practice, and you can't compare it. The Cup Series wasn't even on the track. They were on the oval. So this seems to be a sign of what's just going on with the general state of this track, because this track it's a temporary track, at least in that section of the course, because down that section of the course, that is Holman Boulevard. Now, for a long time, that road was just a thoroughway through the middle of the track. I mean, you can go from the north to the south end down that road. And then, when the road course was developed, they decided they would use that as the back straightaway. So, that curb has to be a temporary curb, because that is still used when they're not using the road course. So, that curb will get taken up every time they're done with the race weekend so they can use it as a road, which is its intended function. So basically what happened is that temporary curb that was likely meant for Indy cars, or maybe a little bit heavier than Indy cars, but not maybe heavy-duty stock car NASCARs, that curb probably got worked too much to the point where it couldn't take it anymore, and the curb just came up. So what actually happened when the curb came up? Well, with about 10 to go was when it happened, because William Byron was going over the curb with quite a big pack behind him and a couple of cars in front of him. He wasn't the first person to go over the curb. He was like the 4th or 5th. And when he came over the curb just ripped up, and it basically yanked out the entire bottom of his car and sent everyone behind him spinning as well, either spinning trying to avoid it or spinning hitting the destroyed curb. Now, this basically destroyed the back part, or the first little part of the backstretch, and a red flag had to be called because there was tons of damage, and I mean, there's track damage, obviously, because of the curb coming up, but there was also tire barriers that had gotten messed up because of cars running into them at angles that weren't intended and stuff like that. They needed to stop the race and clean all that stuff up. But yeah, the curb was messed up. They had to take the curb off and finish the race without the curb. And that wasn't going to go well. So after finally green flagging, or yellow flagging the session, taking the red flag off, they had the cars come out for what was going to be intended to be a 2-lap dash to the finish under non-overtime situations. It would have been the actual last 2 scheduled laps of the race. And then the cars with damage came out. They were literally spewing oil everywhere, spewing parts everywhere, and NASCAR had to continue the session under yellow flag. Now, why cars like James Davison had to come out with oil spewing everywhere and having no actual intention of finishing the race well, but just finishing the race in general, and had to ruin the track and make it a 10-lap longer race to do that when you had people like Denny Hamlin who were low on fuel. Why that happened, I have no idea. But after they finally got the race restarted, it went red flag again because the same thing happened. The curb didn't come up, but everyone hit the anti-cut curb. Now that the actual curb was gone, the curb was the turtle. That thing will send you up in the air if you hit it, and Michael McDowell hit it. And he went off and caused a smaller earthquake of a crash behind him. So, yeah. Then we had another red flag. So they literally had a red flag that lasted about, I mean, in total, it probably lasted about an hour worth of not racing, only to go back and green flag the race and go a half a lap, and the same thing happened that happened before. Yeah. Okay. That was insane. But on the restart, which ended up, thank the Lord, being the final restart, Denny Hamlin was leading with Chase Briscoe on his outside coming into the first corner. I had forgotten Chase Briscoe's name. I always mix up him and Austin Cindric. But anyways, Hamlin was leading, and he ended up pushing Austin Cindric off of the racetrack in the first corner, and he had to go through the infield grass. Now, the problem is, in NASCAR, that's a penalty, and if you don't stop, hold your car, or basically, the rule for that is you have to stop and then start again. So basically, you have to come to a complete stop loosely on the track, obviously for safety reasons, and then go again. Now, Austin Cindric, who was still at that point in second place, where he had been before the corner, he didn't want to do that, because that would mean giving up a chance at a win. Who would want to do that? So, he just kept on going. And by kept on going, I mean he went through another 4 or 5 corners, and then when it came to the S's before exiting the infield section, he flat out punted Denny Hamlin. Yeah, so he decided that Hamlin, who shoved him off the track, he wasn't going to win either. So that threw the race into absolute chaos, because for at least a corner, you had Austin Cindric in front on track of a race that he wasn't leading, because he was going to have to do a stop and go, which would render him completely useless for the proceedings of at least the win. So who was in second, or effectively first at the moment? A.J. Allmendinger. Yeah, if this race couldn't get any crazier, A.J. Allmendinger in a Colleague racing car who is racing part-time was leading the race. So, why did I say Austin Cindric was leading on track for one corner? Did Allmendinger pass him? No, he locked up. He locked up coming into the last 12, 13, 14 corner section. I never can figure out what to call that, but I'll just call it that. He locked up coming into that and ended up having to take the motorcycle course while everyone else went through and sailed on by. He ended up taking the stop-and-go penalty but at that point, he had already punted Denny Hamlin, and NASCAR had told him to serve it earlier than that. So, even though apparently he said he never got the message, he had already given a drive-through penalty, which he also had literally that lap to serve because it was coming to the white flag. NASCAR gave Austin Cindric, NASCAR gave Chase Briscoe no chance there, in my opinion. I think that was a stupid call. He didn't gain a noticeable advantage from it, and he was the one getting shoved off, not the one getting, like, shoving someone off. So, in my opinion, that was a dumb penalty for Austin Cindric, but I don't know. It was stupid. So, yeah. Anyways, that was basically what happened. A.J. Allmendinger survived the last lap and went on to win pretty easily. Yeah. So it was quite a crazy race, saying that A.J. Allmendinger won a race that Kyle Larson was leading most of the time, and then coming to the restart, it was Denny Hamlin. There was no point where Allmendinger seemed like he was very likely to win the race. I think on the restart, where they had the second red flag after it, it was like he was like 7th or something, and he had literally, into the first corner, he gained a bunch of spots and was like 4th or something, 3rd or 4th. And on the final restart, I think he had just taken advantage of the first corner again and gained a lot of spots there. And then by the time Hamlin and Briscoe had been taken out of contention, he was first place. So Allmendinger kind of inherited a win there that probably should have been anyone other than his. So yeah, that was the not Brickyard 400. My opinions on this race are seriously put it back on the oval. If we're going to have a fine race until the last 10 laps where it just becomes a complete crapshoot, then I'd rather have it on the oval that the track is at least structurally sound. Not saying anything about the road course, because IndyCar can run there fine. The Xfinity Series seems to be able to run there fine, but the Cup cars, especially at the end of a long weekend, seem to have issues there. So in my opinion, just put it back on the oval. It's the Brickyard 400 for a reason. That's the tradition. Don't change it. So, yeah, that's about all I have. I'll be doing coverage of Le Mans practice starting tomorrow. If that's all, like, life-dependent, I've got school and sports stuff going on, so I don't entirely know if I'm going to be able to get to all of that. But I will make my best attempt, plus I don't have as much going on later in the week. I've had stuff more... The beginning of my week is weighted more than the end of the week for sports stuff. I seem to have lots of practices at the beginning, and by the end of the week, it's just shorter stuff and less frequently. Anyways, it's weird. Anyways, enough of me talking about sports. Thank you guys all so much for watching. Those are my opinions on the last 10 laps of the Brickyard, basically. Yeah, thank you guys all so much for watching. I'll see you all for Le Mans. Bye.